Okay guys, today we're going to talk about the Kramer Stagemaster, which is considered Kramer's flagship model between 1986 and 1990 and was the most expensive and was the first neck-through model that they built. And I also read somewhere that this is the model that they wanted Eddie Van Halen to play, but instead, of course, he did the Kramer Beretta style thing. Here's an ad with Eddie Van Halen holding Dennis Bernardi's hand up because they supposedly did a lot of sales that year. There are basically two generations of the Stagemasters. The first one you can tell because of these diamond inlays right here. Okay, and also I believe some of the Floyds in these were top mounted, not recessed. They sat against the body. But these had ebony fretboards, 25.5 scale length. The Floyd Duncan pickups, the usual stuff, the three-piece laminated back of the neck, maple neck, the usual Kramer stuff. So this is the first generation. Supposedly, from what I've heard, you're not going to see this on Vintage Kramer, though they've been talking about this on the old forums and also new forums, that these were made, a lot of these ones were possibly made at the Larivi factory, okay? The Larivi factory in Canada, and also some of the Kramer Pauldines were also made there. And I believe a lot of these diamond inlaid ones were made there. And I thought that was only the case, but later on, there is a few brief examples of the Mach 2 or the version 2 Stagemasters made in Canada, but I think most of them were made by ESP. Go on to vintagekramer.com to get a lot of these specific details in the specs, but it's the usual Kramer stuff. You get the special, deluxe, standard, which basically explains the pickup configurations on this, right? But here's the early 87 catalog of the Stagemasters. These are the diamond inlaid ones. The main thing you notice, what I noticed anyway, is that the lower horn, the cutaways aren't quite as deep. It's I'd say a little more difficult to access the 24th fret on these earlier Stagemasters than the later ones, probably built by ESP. Here's from the early 87 catalog of a Stagemaster Custom, and also next to a Kramer Pauldine, which is also, this one was supposedly built by the Larivi factory. Usually, I believe the ones that had the ebony fingerboard of the Pauldines were made at the Larivi factory, but these are probably made at the same time, right? They do have some similarities. This is the guitar that Larivi is most famous for building in the 80s. This was played by Key Marcello of the band Europe. And yeah, you can tell this one has a lot of similarities to that. The Kramer Pauldine especially. It almost looks almost exactly like in some aspects. These are the Kramer Liberties. They're only made for 1 year, and they're very similar to the Kramer Stagemaster, but a little more fancy. The top one here has a fixed bridge, and the other one has an original Floyd, but yeah, it looks like they got a flame maple. There's a little fancier version. These are pretty rare. You don't see too many of these made because they're only made for 1 year, but yeah, I also believe they have some arch tops versions as well. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second generation of the Stagemaster, and these catalog picks are from the late 87. The other ones are from early 87, so it's a really quick transition. But yeah, these are called the Mach 2 Stagemasters, or the second generation ones. Here, the big difference you'll see is the inlays. They don't have the diamond inlays. They have that shark tooth inlays, as they see. And this one has kind of an arch top to it, and also the cutaway in the lower horn is a little deeper, so it's a little easier to access those upper frets, and most of these were all made by ESP except for maybe a few prototypes. Most of the wood specs are pretty much the same as the first generation Stagemaster, except these had more of mainly all had recessed Floyd roses, where some of the first generation had a top-mounted Floyd. But yeah, same wood specs, you get the same pickups and all that, and of course here you get the different configurations based on the custom, deluxe, deluxe 2s, and all that stuff, the usual Kramer stuff. Here's an early prototype Stagemaster. Of course, you see the main difference is the inlays aren't claws or diamonds, just a regular dot, and also the headstock is a hockey stick, not a pointy, as all the other ones were. Looks like it broke at some point, and here it is. And I also wonder about the hockey stick. That's part of the Eddie Van Halen trying to want him to get to play the Stagemaster instead of all this other stuff. In the Japanese market, they called the Stagemaster the Blues Breaker, so if you see that, those are the ones that are made for the Japanese market. They're pretty similar overall, but once in a while I do see a difference. Here's an ad that has the second generation Stagemasters. Here's a early 87 price list. As you can see, the Stagemasters and the Pauldines are the most expensive, probably because of the neck-through design. And here is the late 87 price list. Of course, Kramer went out of business in 1990 and was purchased by Gibson. Sometime after 2010, Gibson did release a version of the Stagemaster called the SM1. It's pretty similar in all the specs, except the Floyd Rose was a Floyd 1000, not the original Floyd. But yeah, I heard pretty good things about this. I heard it actually played well, and I actually heard from some other people that sometimes they could possibly even play better than the originals. Fast forward a few years later, 2019, and they are re-releasing the Stagemaster again, also called the SM1, but also has some new colors. So you see in the bottom right here, we got a blue one and an orange one, and also on the top you see the Sambora and Kramer Night Swan. But yeah, so they're re-releasing it. I believe they're made in Indonesia or China. I forgot where it was, but they're going to be in the market pretty soon. I'm going to finish off this video with Eddie Van Halen with Floyd Rose on a motorcycle filling up with gas while Floyd Rose is playing a Stagemaster, and it says, "I wouldn't go anywhere without a Floyd." This is one of my favorite and probably the funniest Kramer ad that I like. I don't know why, it's just crazy. But anyway, guys, hope you had a good time. Any comments write them below. If there's anything I'm wrong about, comment below. Check out Vintage Washburn in the forums, and I got some more Kramer videos in the future.